Hi guys, welcome to the 12 o'clock news with Esports Arena and Over.gg. Each week we're going to be bringing you a recap of competitive news from around the Overwatch scene. With me each week is Sideshow, and this week's guest host is Admirable. Welcome guys. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Hello, I'm Sideshow. I do writing and attempting to do a little bit of casting within the competitive Overwatch scene. Moved over from TF2, loving it so far, enjoy what I'm doing.
Hi, I'm Admirable. I'm another TF2 refugee. I'm the puppet master behind Over.gg, pulling Sideshow's strings and making him do all the work. But thanks for having me on, guys.
Fantastic, welcome. Well, the first story we're going to talk about this week is the LDLC and X3 United finalizing their rosters and competing in the Strivewire monthly brawl. What does this mean for the European Overwatch scene going forward?
So for me, the interesting thing about the Strivewire monthly brawl is that it's a completely community-driven tournament, and it was tiny in terms of the prize pool, but it still attracted all the top teams because we just haven't had tournaments in Europe for so long that all of these people are looking for avenues to actually compete against other good teams and get that like good experience. It's better than playing scrims. You know, you're playing in actual matches, you get to test more stuff out. So that was interesting to me. This guy, Izzy, behind the scenes, has just decided to find a load of a more sustainable way of creating a small tournament that can grow over time and develop a relationship with its sponsors and grow viewers, stuff like that. So it's nice to see that kind of stuff happening. Should it even be happening though? I mean, that's a valid question to ask because you're comparing it over to North America. They've got like the new Alienware monthly melee is coming out with $10,000 prize pools. So it's a huge difference between the two of them. So I think it says something about the health of the EU scene, right?
Symptomatic of the kind of drought we've had in EU, the real lack of tournaments. But I mean, it reminds me a lot of TF2 actually, just to see someone step up and put on a show themselves. Much credit to Nuki for putting in all the hard work. The casters, like they had 5 different casts, different languages, all the teams that showed up as well. We had some really great games as well. Like EU seem don't really need money to come out and put on good performances. We saw X Reunited making their first competitive appearance, and they started off quite dramatically with 0-2 loss to Minnow's Pale Golden Rod, but then they managed to shore things up and make it all the way to the final where they closed out, I think 3-0 against Gamers Origin, was it?
Yeah, it was in the final. They'd had 2 close games. Like they went into the playoffs and they had a really close 2-1 game against the Chavs, which I mean could potentially have been a final like further down if they hadn't been matched in the quarterfinals. Then they played against Dignitas, who are like another top team if you're talking about like the tier 2 of Europe. And then they ended up playing against Gamers Origin. Now they're not bad. They're like a good top tier, good tier 2 team as well in terms of Europe, but they beat them 3-0. I think they kind of got the ball rolling by that point. But it was interesting to see the new additions to the team, in my opinion. Like the former Slav squad roster, which just had all these CIS players on, plus a Brit guy called Sharik, has been torn apart and distributed. And Reunited got Rubicon and they've got Sharik. And Rubicon's now playing the flex DPS, like playing Ana and Zen for them, and Sharik's playing tank. And they've like mixed up some other people as well. So Cruz has finally been let off the leash of Lucio and is now showing us like what he can do on DPS. He's playing Genji. So that was really interesting to see.
So linking to the overall health of the EU scene, tornado.rox and Penta lost their Overwatch teams just after Fragsters as well. What do you guys feel about this? I mean, we're seeing these really small European tournaments coupled with just a generally anemic scene in Europe where so much talent is coming out of.
Yeah, Fragsters just, well, none of these organizations have dropped their teams, but the teams have left because they feel like they deserve more. So the team that was previously playing under Fragsters left. The guys that played under tornado.rox, they left as well. And now the news has just come out that Penta's left. And Penta, of the 3, released like more information talking about like the support that they weren't getting from these organizations. I think the organizations are looking at Overwatch League and the lack of information, and also the fact that most people are kind of assuming that North America is going to get the bulk of the action in the first year or first season at the very least. So they don't want to put that much support behind their players and keep them like on a retainer until who knows when. Like who knows when they're going to get poached by a good team or something. So it's a real drought in Europe at the moment. Combine that with the lack of tournaments as well, and you've got a bad situation for the players most of all.
Yeah, that is like the really painful part. There's people making like big life decisions here based on whether or not Overwatch is going to be super successful as an esport. And this rumor that the trial season is just going to be limited to NA has been really persistent and has like created like cloud over EU, and everybody is just kind of ruled by this uncertainty. It's really painful to watch. I'm glad I'm not one of the players in that position. Like, these guys are just like, have gone from, making very little money. They've just left their orgs and they're just playing for free. Like, they're on a wing and a prayer here. They're trying to compete in any tournament they can to just showcase their skill. And there's even a drought of tournaments, but luckily we did get that Strivewire one. So, I think it's the EU community that's actually going to dig themselves out of the hole rather than Blizzard, maybe, because we're still waiting for the news of this next big major.
The second highest region in terms of competitive players as well, Europe, like after Korea, is the third lowest in terms of health of the scene as well. Like, the Korean scene's currently got Apex going on, they're perfectly fine. You can argue the players aren't on as high a salary as some other places perhaps, but North America's booming as well, and those players aren't competing as much at the top end of the scene as a general rule. And Europe, where you could foster so much talent in terms of the players and the teams that could form there, you've got Rogue, NIP, and Reunited, who are currently there, and they've just got nothing to play for at the moment. And there's all of these smaller organizations. The people who are playing this Strivewire, 15 teams, 7 of them unsigned. What's going on? People are getting so worried, I think, as well about the future of EU Overwatch, and that's a spiral that could quickly get started.
Interesting. So moving on, we were going to talk about Too Easy revealing his new roster for Bench Boys, which is essentially just pickups from guys who've been benched or cut, etc., from other teams. It's a really interesting concept because we've seen a lot of moving around lately on rosters. What do you guys think about this this group of players playing together?
This is weird. This is like a meme that got out of hand. It's really strange. It makes sense, right? You've got a load of players that have either left or been cut from teams, and they come together. Well, to be fair, that's only 3 of them. That's only half of them so far. Maybe if Winghaven joins later down the road, or Skipjack, then you've got more of this kind of Bench Boys feel. But certainly with Too Easy, Crew, Kib, 2 of those guys left or were kicked from Reunited at some point. So it's a really weird concept for a team, especially because 2 of them at some point have been kicked for personality problems. Like Too Easy and Crew, you don't really know whether they've worked on that, whether it was just specifically that one team. So the community has this instant reaction to blame them as toxic. They just love applying this label all the time of toxic. So I don't believe that's the case. Like, this team potentially could work, but to me it sounds more like they've got these players together who currently don't have a home, and they're just going to show how good they are. This doesn't feel to me like a long-term plan.
Yeah, maybe. Too Easy has a pretty excellent track record for building teams. If you give him credit for Reunited and then the team that became FaZe, I'd have to kind of fancy his chances here to put together a half-decent roster. I know on paper it seems kind of crazy. You've got Too Easy and Crew who are typecast as these hot-headed guys who just can't seem to help themselves and stay with the team. But Too Easy said that he had grown as a person since Reunited. He came out and said that he had been toxic then, and he felt that he hadn't been toxic in FaZe. And he's just a, perennial competitor. He always wants to prove himself, and I think maybe getting removed from FaZe is just going to spur him on again. So I believe that it could work, as crazy as that sounds. But just like you say, all these big fiery personalities together in a team, and then there's some unknowns there as well. We're still not even sure who that tank is going to be. Winghaven is in the mix. He's been mentioned, of course, a former Reunited player, as well as Skipjack, who had been playing for Misfits, then made that transfer over to Rogue and then got dropped for not being able to speak French, which they probably should have figured out earlier.
Yeah. Well, they're actually playing with Winghaven in the Esports Arena 3v3s this week, so maybe we'll see what comes of that. So up next, we've got the Over.gg World Rankings. This is a really interesting list of top teams put together by you guys. Really good reading, actually. It's down in the description of the video if you guys want to read the actual rankings, but we're going to talk a little bit about that right now. Sideshow, take it away.
Right. So the world rankings in any sense is going to be a subjective, opinion-based kind of thing, but the idea that OverGG came up with, and it's not just me, I published the article, but there's a panel of people who work on it behind the scenes, including Admirable as well, is that we're actually looking at data from a set period of time. This isn't just our gut feeling on who would win a tournament. It's not just we're not just throwing names out there. So we've looked back, or we do look back every time this series comes up, of roughly 2 months. This time it was slightly larger. It was 3 months because of the winter break in between. and what the games have been played, like who they've won against is a big thing as well, because it doesn't really matter if you've made like a deep tournament run if the only people you've beaten are, for example, NRG, when Cloud9 made this run at MLG Vegas, and everyone's like, oh, they came the same place as Fnatic. Doesn't really count if the only people you win against NRG twice and you've lost to FaZe and Fnatic. FaZe and Envious, that was. So we look back over who's won and like how deep they've got. So one of the problems at the moment in Overwatch is that there just aren't enough global competitions to be able to like nail it down. So it's hazy around the edges, but I think it's a pretty good list that we came up with. And it shows a big rise in terms of the Korean teams at the moment, because the European teams have just fallen off the face of the earth, given that they haven't played in literally the last 2 months. If you're talking about NIP, the last time they played, apart from a recent Winter Assembly LAN, was literally 2 months ago at the end of November, when they were playing at DreamHack and got beaten by Fnatic in that ridiculous Volskaya final game.
Don't listen to Sideshow, guys. Basically, what we do is we've got a dartboard on the back of the door. We just throw the names up there. You're right, Reddit. We don't know what we're talking about. But for real, we do put in quite a lot of time and effort and a good bit of debate going on, especially now that we've got Harsha there. There's a third point in contention. But for me, I'm just happy to see Envious up there for many, many months. Like, since they were IDD, QD, I always kind of rained on their parade a little bit, just waiting for that LAN victory to occur. And over this period, they finally made it happen, and they are definitely worthy to be the #1 team here. And I think they're #1 by quite some distance. So it's going to be really interesting to see Apex Season 2, if anyone can catch up to them.
I mean, the interesting thing there is that Envious, yes, at the moment, in terms of what they've won, are #1 by quite a distance, but in terms of their actual level at the moment, like if we were doing just a gut ranking, like a power rankings kind of thing, rather than attempting to actually structure it based on evidence of where they've placed themselves, I have a feeling that these Korean teams are really going to bring it to them, because Kongdu Panthera look incredibly scary, and Luxury Watch Blue, like they did look really good at IEM Gyeonggi. They beat Kongdu Panthera 3-0, but I feel like with this new patch and the way that Panthera are starting to structure their team together and really start to build up like these single support defenses that we were seeing today when they just wiped the floor with Runaway, I think this kind of stuff where you've got Panthera, Lunatic High, Luxury Watch Blue, Uncia, this is a minefield for Envious to get through. So I would be really surprised. Like, it would be great if they managed to make it through and win for the second time, but I would personally be really surprised if they're able to make it all the way through in a ridiculous fashion like they did previously. The Koreans genuinely look better, not just everyone else seems to have not played that much.
All right. Well, if you'd like to take a look at that, again, like I said, it's down in the description. Really interesting stuff. Very detailed and in-depth article that you guys did. And I was really impressed with it. Our last story today, we're going to talk a little bit about Kungarna and Ghost. So if you've been following the Overwatch scene at all, the last 2 weeks have been a little bit of a roller coaster for everybody. Right before the NG Winter Premiere Finals, they announced, Kungarna announced that they were signing with Ghost Gaming, an organization that none of us really knew anything about. They just said, rest assured, these guys know what they're doing. They're big in esports, and everyone just kind of said, yep, okay, well, that sounds good. And then shortly after, I think it's been, 10 days, Kungarna tweeted that they're no longer related to Ghost Gaming and they have nothing to do with them. And I think only half the team at the time was going to stay with Ghost, and the other half was pre-signed to go with another team. But there's a lot of room for speculation as to what's going to happen next. What do you guys think about this whole situation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you nailed the facts down in terms of what we actually know, right? It's like this Ghost organization pop out of nowhere. Kungarna decide they're going to split. 3 of them have already decided to go to some unnamed organization. Most of the speculation is around TSM, which sounds like a good shout from my point of view. And the other half of the team were going to sign with Ghost, or did sign with Ghost, or who knows what's actually happened there, because they were representing them at the LAN, but now they say they're no longer like involved with that. So did they sign and now they've been sold to the same team that the rest of Kungarna were going to, or did they not sign? They were just having like a gentleman's agreement with pre-negotiations, and they've now just decided to drop that and leave. Like, nobody really knows what's going on here. I assume that Ghost, having talked to the guy behind it, or one of the guys behind it rather, is going to get involved with Overwatch in some capacity later on. We'll have to see what that is. And it's going to be really interesting for me whether Kungarna actually do reform, because they haven't said anything about that. All they said was that those 3, not with Ghost, anymore. So they haven't actually said that the whole group of Kungana is going to stay together, but that would be my read on it. The most likely situation for me, the end goal here, is that I think someone, say TSM for the sake of argument, has decided to pick up this Kungana team. 3 of them want to go elsewhere with Ghost, and they just increase the price and try and attract this rest of the team in. Because you don't want half a team that's already unproven and just had like one good run in a tournament. You know, there's already question marks about how they're going to perform further down the road, and now you're trying to change half the lineup if you draft them to an organization. So you really want that core of 6, or, you know, at the very least you want 4 or 5 of them. So I think this organization that was already getting half of Kungana is probably getting the other half, and there's an announcement coming, who knows, today, tomorrow.
Like, there's going to be a little bit of a fracture there, surely. Like, 3 of them were just so quick to sell out their teammates. So, like, yeah, screw you guys. We're going to go and take this fat paycheck from TSM or wherever it's rumored to be. But now they're coming back. I mean, the whole situation was bizarre. Like, people on Reddit, like, didn't believe the org was real just because they, like, renamed the Kungana Twitter. The whole thing seemed kind of amateurish. I know it was rushed to get it out in time for the winter premiere final, but like, nobody believed that this was a real org. But yet we've heard from, you know, reliable sources that there's serious backing behind this team. It's just a real absolute, it's an absolute mess, to be honest. But like, people's worst fears seem to have come true. But like we saw on Twitter there, that the new Ghost Gaming account responded to the old Kungana one, saying, you know, good luck, and stating that they're definitely going to stay in Overwatch. Or, you know, they didn't like really all the details, but like in the same period since the finals and over like the weekend when we were trying to figure out what was going to happen to the team, we were hearing that there was going to be open tryouts and all sorts of things. Like, they seem to have big plans, and then all of a sudden one tweet comes out and it's over. It's just like exciting to watch, but you know, just wondering, like, what is this organization thinking, inside, Joe?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying that I think it's definitely like it must have been a bidding process behind the scene based on these 2 organizations trying to actually get the majority of the roster, because both of them have gone in with the idea of picking up like a roster that's unsigned, showing a lot of talent, came second at this fairly large tournament in North America, although the tier 1 teams largely weren't there, and they have both ended up with half of it each, and that's a compromise that doesn't actually work for either of them, in my opinion. The way that you split that team as well, like, neither side got all of the good players. I don't think the talent was distributed on that team in like 1 or 2 people. It was just like they worked well as a team and they were all really promising talents. So I think neither organization got the best way of what they wanted, and one of them has just decided to step in and take the whole roster. That would be my idea of what's been going on behind the scenes. So we'll see, I imagine, over the next couple of days.
Oh, you wonder too, why the rush? Because there's nothing to play for right now. I mean, we know that Blizzard is planning eventually, you know, the Overwatch League is going to happen this year, but nobody knows exactly when. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. And at the same time, you've got all the roster shakeups happening across the scene and no premier events coming up in North America. So what's the rush? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's another good point. The rush might simply be that there was another organization looking for the team, and so they're in a position where they have to try and get them before they're signed to another organization. But I don't subscribe to the kind of idea that a lot of people do in the community, that these organizations know more than the general public does. We've heard from quite a lot of org owners and like people in teams, players that you would expect to probably know more than your average Joe, who simply don't. It just seems to be that there aren't that many details currently out there in terms of the Overwatch League, tournaments happening in 2017, stuff in Europe. These details just simply don't seem to be out there unless you're literally in talks with the people who are running them. So I don't think there was any particular rush that they're looking for. I don't think this could be, I don't think you can read into it that there's something big on the horizon that they're trying to nail down the team for. Although one could argue that the whole of 2017 is going to be something big, that you really want a team if you want to be involved in Overwatch. You want to be there when it actually launches.
There could be something in it, you know, like, I feel like now is a good time to try and tie players down with contracts. Like, you got Kungana there, one of the hottest properties in North America. We've seen much worse teams get signed and turned into professional gamers. Worst case scenario, like you pick them up and then you trade them out and get a fat buyout. So it wouldn't be the worst idea. but it's just absolutely bizarre. I'm just excited to see how
the
it's
other
going
thing
to turn
is
out.
it's the dichotomy between how the North American organizations are interacting with players and how the European organizations are. The European organizations are stepping back and offering even less support because of the confusion about the future. And these North American organizations are instead kind of jumping into it and going, right, well, we need to pick someone up quickly. So there's a big split in the attitude of organizations going forwards, which is partly, I think, because of the tournament organizers being more willing to run the events in North America, or they have been previously. There's been none announced so far. I don't know what's happening in 2017. But it's probably also because there's this rumor going around, although there's nothing confirmed, that the first season of the Overwatch League is going to be purely for North America and then rolled out to other regions later on. Now, as far as I know, there's actually been no official wording on that. It's just people reading into like hints that they said in the BlizzCon announcement. So they'll find out later on down the line, but we could see rough times for Europe ahead compared to North America just based on a rumor.
And the other thing they said in the announcement was that there would be a global talent pool, and as far as I know, they haven't walked that back yet. So what you're looking at is if you own, the top 6 players in the world, maybe they have to buy them off you like they did with CGS. Maybe you're in a really nice position. I don't know.
Yeah, there's just no information either way, as far as we can tell. Like, not even the organizers know. I know that a lot of players have signed contracts that last up until, like, after the Overwatch League is planned to happen. Mm-hmm. But I think that's just organizations just trying to nail down their players so that they have players for that period of time, no matter what the circumstances throw at them. Like, if Blizzard have to buy them out for this global talent pool, which would be a very strange situation, or if they then buy their way into the Overwatch League, or if they just compete in, like, the rest of the year where it's an open circuit, then they have the players there. So there's a lot of people just trying to nail down their player base in the moment, make sure they have a team for whatever happens. But in Europe, that's just not happening.
Like, we say that it's a rumor, that the first season, the trial season, is going to be NA only, but like, whenever you're talking about conspiracy theories, they always tell you to follow the money, and like, everybody is invested into NA. No one wants to put money into EU. It seems like, there's probably some credence to it, but it's just, again, the uncertainty created by Blizzard, everybody wondering what exactly is going on. But it seems like these teams know something, Sideshow, right?
Well, here's the other thing. The reason that people want to invest in NA is because the tournament organizers can afford to invest more in NA than Europe as well. It's just, it's always been a thing within esports. Like, you have North American marketing budgets that are supposed to cover the whole of North America. It's a huge place, has a huge amount of money flowing through it. European companies, they have marketing budgets normally for their country or for, a small district like Scandinavia or something like that, or the UK. They don't have the same kind of available marketing budgets so that they can pour it into tournaments in that sense. So you normally get smaller tournaments, and especially if they're going to make them regional, like MLG Vegas has been, like Winter Premier has been. Like, if you think about it, both of those tournaments really could have been international. Intercontinental is what I mean. Every tournament in Europe is international, but they could have been intercontinental tournaments, but they weren't. They chose to regionalize them, and MLG Vegas was an invitational as well. So they were only inviting North American teams, or teams that live in North America, because NBS is a European team. I don't care what you chant in USA when there's no USA player on their team. But that's another reason I think why they're invested in North America, is because there is more money there if you're talking about the open circuit anyway, no matter what happens in terms of Overwatch League.
All right. Well, I think we've had a great show. I'd like to thank you, Sideshow, who will be back with me again next week. And Admirable, thanks for being our guest. It was lovely to see you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
See you next week.